Welcome to MidField Sportscast.
And our 7th episode of the Divided Friendship Podcast. It is me. It is Philly.
Me.
It is Luke.
Yeah.
We're back here again, a day after week 2. That's close. As we're filming this, it is Sunday. Yesterday was obviously college football.
Watching some NFL today.
Right now, yeah, it's on TV. Watching the Browns and the Bengals and the 49ers and the Steelers. But heading in, doesn't feel like it's real. But we're already heading into week 3 of the college football season. We are moving fast.
We sure are.
And like we do every week, we're going to run down some games of the week previous. And we're going to do this a little bit different, so we're not just being repetitive. We're going to go just through these games that we want to talk about. Each of us will get however long we want to talk, and we will get to our games that we predicted here, but we're not just going to sit here and talk about these 5 games that we predicted last week, because that's just going to get repetitive and boring. So
instead, we'll just go through all the games collectively as a whole, and
not all of them, obviously, but Philly will pick a couple he wants to talk about, hand the phone over to Luke, and then he'll pick a few that he wants to talk about, and then we'll all talk about those games, obviously. But if we want, say I want to talk about a certain game, I'll take the phone, I'll say my opinion about it, and other people will state theirs. That's how this is going to go. So, Billy, what do you want to talk about?
Well, we already have a segment for the Oregon game, don't we? Like a whole segment?
I just said it could be combined.
Okay. All right, first up, obviously, the main game of the week. Alabama hosting Texas. College game day, game of the week. Texas ended up winning this one 34-24. Good performance from Quinn Ewers. 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Jonathan Brooks had a rushing touchdown. Adonai Mitchell, which I'm pretty sure that's the transfer from Georgia, he had 2 receiving touchdowns. Xavier Worthy, 5 for 75 and a touchdown. On the other side of the ball for Alabama, Jalen Milroe, he's got to step it up a little. Got to limit the turnovers. 14 for 27, 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
Since we're just doing this conversation type of thing, Jalen Milroe here, I've said it already to a few people, Alabama fans. I've talked to a few of them about it. Jalen Milroe, every quarterback you see that's going to play at Alabama has a good arm. They're going to obviously have a good arm because they're at Alabama. They're not just going to be terrible. Jalen Milroe himself is very good at being able to run the football. And he has an arm. It's powerful. But what he cannot do is read a defense.
He's got to work on his decision-making.
Throwing it, and those DBs didn't have anything to do. They weren't jumping towards the ball. The ball was right to him. I don't know if he's not seeing the safeties, seeing the corners, whatever's going on, but he has got to be able to read a defense to be a quarterback at Alabama and the SEC.
Talking about Alabama quarterbacks, let's talk about Texas. Let's talk about Quinn Ewers. 24 for 38, 349 passing yards, 3 touchdowns passing. He took 3 carries for 11 yards. Not so great on the ground game, but great game through the air for Quinn Ewers. Not great from Jalen Milroe. 2 picks, 2 touchdowns, 14 for 27, 255 yards. The Texas defense was great at holding the Crimson Tide's offense in this one, which is something college football fans love to see. I love to see.
We hate Alabama.
Yes. Nobody likes Alabama. Only if you are in Alabama, then you don't like Alabama. So, receiving game you had Jatavion Sanders going.
Talked about this, boy.
I don't care. 5 receptions, 114 yards. No tutties. But, great game overall for Texas. This is good momentum. And this could push them to a potential spot in the college football playoff. And at least a New Year's Six bowl game.
It's week 3.
I'm saying it's a momentum.
One thing you have to think about is it was week 2. I know we love talking about Alabama and how they lost, but you can never count Nick Saban out.
Never.
Knowing him, this team could go undefeated the rest of the season, make the playoffs, and maybe win it. counting Nick Saban out is something you don't want to do in college football. They have a very hard schedule coming forward. They got LSU. They have LSU
Yeah, they do.
They have LSU. If they can run the table, make the SEC title game, then they have to go against Georgia. I mean,
Most
we're
likely.
looking ahead right now, but just don't count Nick Saban out. This was not a good performance. Offensively, was not very good. I mean, when you have, there was one certain play they had their running back wide open, Milroe just overshoots him. That's one thing. Yes, he has an arm. He has to learn how to read a defense, and he has to settle in the pocket and not be so antsy. He tries to run a little bit too much. Same thing I think about when I think of Devin Brown, which we'll get into a little bit later. But that's one of the games we wanted to talk about today. What we got? What else?
And like Maddyx was saying with Nick Saban, you can never count him out. That's why I was really, I wasn't sure if I wanted to pick Texas or not in our predictions game, but I stuck with my gut on that one. But never count Nick Saban out.
I picked Alabama just because I didn't want it to be all across the board again like we did with South Carolina and North Carolina, and we all be wrong. I just wanted to be – I wanted Texas to win, obviously, but I wanted those points. Like, if they got it wrong – I mean, you get what I'm trying to say. You get what I'm trying to say.
Besides the Alabama and Texas game, we almost had two insane upsets. We almost had Texas Tech beating Oregon, and we almost had Appalachian State beating North Carolina. Now, let's start with the North Carolina game. The North Carolina game, end of regulation, 2 seconds left. North Carolina went for a 39-yard kick and shanked it. Sent it to overtime. Both teams scored pretty easily. And North Carolina on offense, just great in overtime. Appalachian State couldn't get that fourth down conversion in the second overtime and caused them to lose the game. But overall, Appalachian State, they fought hard in that one. A decent performance by Joey Aguilar, quarterback for Appalachian State. 275 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Drake May having a little bit of an underperformance here. Drake May has not been looking great this season. 21 for 30, 208 yards, no touchdowns. Yeah, Drake May is gonna have to step it up. He can play great, but as of now, he hasn't been showing.
Yeah, you see, for me, this North Carolina team, they're a little weird to try to predict because some weeks they play very great. Drake May puts up crazy stats, and then some weeks he's just off. And he has to be able to be on every single game and lead this team. I mean, he doesn't have a crazy amount of weapons around him. He lost Downs in the offseason to the NFL.
To the Colts.
Yeah, but he's got to be able to lead this team. I didn't upload the video, but I was in the process of making a video that I didn't end up finishing because I was editing the podcast. But in that video, I said my upset of the week. We'll talk more about upset of the week later on this video, or in this podcast. But my upset of the week pick was North Carolina Appalachian State. I didn't upload it, so you guys didn't see it, but they can vouch for me. I actually did say that. And it almost did happen. They almost pulled it off. I was rooting for Appalachian State. I wasn't really watching that game. I don't remember what game I was watching, but I look at ESPN. I see that score. I go there quickly. And I start watching, and they go to double overtime. It was another great game between these two. And like Mac Brown said after the game, he's glad they don't play Appalachian State anymore. 2 classics with them the past 2 years, especially last year, 72-73 or something like that.
Very good games between the two teams.
It was in the 70s, I know that. All right, what other games we got to talk about?
To the next game. The next almost upset was Oregon and Texas Tech. Oregon wasn't bad. It's just that defense was not holding up against the Red Raiders. Texas Tech was through the air. Tyler Shaw, is that how you say it?
Something like that.
Tyler Shaw. 24 for 40, 282 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks.
One thing about him, I don't know if you knew this, Luke.
Oregon transfer.
That's what I was going to say. He came from Oregon. I know it sounds like I'm interrupting Luke, which, I mean, I kind of am, but this is like more of a conversation type thing. It's not turn by turn. So if Dawson wants to state something, he can state something, obviously.
Oh, I'm going to state something.
But this game, Shaw, he played great to begin the game. The first half was pretty good. Second half, he did not play as good as he did in the first, and he turned the ball over twice. They have the game. They're trying to drive down the field to win the game, and he throws a pick six. That's not what you want to happen. So I think Philly has something he wants to say here. What do you got?
Luke, do you want to finish your thought first?
Bo Nix, 32 for 44, 359 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, that was a good game from Oregon in the second half. Let's move on to Wisconsin versus Washington State.
Whoa, no. You thought you could sneak by, buddy.
We got something about to go down here. Oops.
First off, I'm going to talk about the game. Then we can get to what I really want to talk about. Texas Tech, they were only down 5 points going into halftime. Scored 14 in the third, took a lead, and then got outscored 20-3 in the fourth quarter. Obviously, Oregon's defense came through big time in the fourth quarter, holding the Texas Tech defense to 3 points as the Oregon offense really kicked it into gear and came back on the road, good environment, and won it. Bo Nix, 360 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Bucky Irving, 11 carries, 38 yards, and a touchdown. Troy Franklin, 6 receptions, 103 yards, and a touchdown. Also, Tez Johnson, 4 receptions, 37 yards. He had the other receiving touchdown.
Philly is really analyzing this game for a specific reason here.
Tyler Shaw got to cut down on the turnovers. Has to. It was looking like it was going to be his revenge game at first on the Ducks. But then 2 of those picks, one of them he got the ball hit out of his arm, and then the second one, it was a Hail Mary at the end of the game. So really wasn't playing bad up until the fourth quarter. He also had a rushing touchdown, 100 yards on the ground. So very solid performance for Tyler Shaw. And what I really want to talk about here is how you might want to give a mic to Luke.
Here we go.
What I really want to talk about is how I've been with Oregon. I have said Oregon was going to do very well this season from the very first time we talked about something like that on the podcast. So, episode 5, I predict them in the playoffs winning the national championship. And then this guy, Luke,
I actually already predicted my playoffs before he did.
But hold on. This guy, Luke, he can predict his playoffs before me all he wants. But the first 5 episodes, he said nothing about Oregon. Ever. The whole time, he said nothing about Oregon.
Exactly. I didn't say anything about Oregon, meaning I didn't say they were bad, nor did I say they were good.
Actually, whenever I showed him my preseason top 10, which we discussed on episode 1 of the podcast,
which was about a month ago,
he said it was bad to have them in the top 4.
Listen, let me...
Either way, they hadn't played a game yet, even if it was a month ago.
Yeah, but a month ago, let me tell you something. A month ago, my college football knowledge was not good, and I'm not saying it is good now, because some of my picks could be delusional. Yeah, what I'm saying is I've learned more from the podcast, during the podcast, because I've been able to do more research. During my playoff picks, when I was picking. Shut up. When I was picking my playoffs, I narrowed it down to 6 teams, Oregon being one of them, and I did my research on Oregon. I thought that they were...
He did his research without knowing any of their players other than Bo Nix. I just want that to be known. Oh, and it appears he is leaving. He just sat down the mic and got up and walked off. And he's back.
Okay.
He's had to take a little walk of shame.
I don't have to...
Okay, a little bat flip on the mic.
Well, Philly just spoke his mind.
That was my team, bro. That was my dark horse team. It's been my dark horse team from the second we started this podcast. And then this dude comes out of nowhere and puts them in his playoffs. Yeah, keep the mic out your face, boy. Yeah, keep the mic out your face. What you got to say? Uh-huh.
All right, moving on after that little argument, the first one on the podcast. Now we're going to move on to the next segment in this podcast, which is our top 5 games of the week.
New AP poll just dropped, too.
New AP.
Should I read it off?
Yeah, let's.
All right, so new AP poll just came out about 2 minutes ago. Number 1, we have the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 2, Michigan. We're just going to go through this really quick. Number 3, jumping up from 4, is Florida State.
Wow.
Number 4 now is Texas.
Bro,
they jumped from 11.
We better be 5.
Number 5 is USC.
Oh my gosh.
Number 6 is Ohio State.
That's funny.
Number 7, Penn State. Number 8, Washington. Number 9, Notre Dame. Number 10, falling all the way from 3, Alabama. Tennessee drops to 11. Utah stays put at 12. Oregon stays put at 13. LSU stays at 14. Kansas State stays at 15. I have a weird feeling Kansas is going to be in this. And this is our raw reactions to this. First time seeing it. Number 16, Oregon State. Number 17, they jump up after beating another ranked team. It's Ole Miss. Number 18, Colorado.
Wow.
They jump Oklahoma, who falls to 19. Number 20 is now North Carolina. Number 21 is Duke. Number 22, who was not ranked last week, the Miami Hurricanes.
Whoa.
Jump into the top 25 after a ranked win. Also jump into the top 25 after a ranked win. Washington State.
Over a team I was very high on, Wisconsin last week.
Also a team that was not ranked last week. UCLA. After Dante Moore's first career start, and number 25 coming back into the rankings is the Iowa Hawkeyes.
See, I'm an Ohio State fan. Being at 6, I mean, it's a little aggravating, but every year when we get, like the years we get put at 1 or 2, and there's so much hype around us, we always, I guess you would say, disappoint. This, and the years we're doubted, we do so much better. So being at 6, I believe, if we handle business against Notre Dame, we're obviously going to sneak ourselves back up into the top 4. It doesn't really matter right now. These rankings mean absolutely nothing. If you keep,
pretty much.
If you keep winning, you get into the top 4 in the playoffs. That matters. But the top 4 in the AP poll, I mean, it's just bragging rights, kind of. Obviously, if Ohio State was 2, I'd be like, we're the number 2 team in the nation. But, I mean, being at 6 is... Complaining about being number 6 is a little weird.
It is.
Because there's 26 teams or something like that.
Something like that. It's almost 130.
Yeah. Being 6 it's great. And I believe we handle business against Notre Dame, which I believe we will.
That'll push you guys up if you win.
We'll go up. And Notre Dame's at what?
9.
That's going to be a good game.
It should be a very good matchup. It should be.
All right. Moving on.
And before we leave this, with 4 teams dropping out, or with 4 teams coming in, that means 4 teams had to drop out. So, Clemson falls. They are the leading vote getter outside of the top 25. Tulane also falls out. Wisconsin as well. And Texas A&M falls out, and they are not receiving any other votes after that loss.
People have given up on A&M. They got to get back up in there.
One team that is receiving votes that kind of catches my eye is Wyoming.
Ooh.
They have 1 vote. Mississippi State has 5. Kentucky has 5. Minnesota has 3. Cincy has 3. Oklahoma State, Maryland, and James Madison all have 1. And Fresno State also has 3.
What about the Marshall Thundering Herd?
They're not in there. I don't know. Clemson has 86. Arkansas has 33. TCU 19. Kansas as well with 19. Tulane 17. Wisconsin 10.
All right. After that,
now we can dip.
Put together segment there. A few surprising things happened there, but I mean, we'll talk a little more about Ohio State and Michigan later in this podcast with our segment about those two teams. Moving on, like we were talking about earlier, the point from last week for our top 5 games of the week of last week. Gaining 3 points, Philly moving it up to 9. Gaining 10 points, Luke moving him up to 15. Gaining 3 points, me putting me up to 8 total points. And gaining 4 points, Quentin putting him to 8 points, meaning in first is Luke, and second is Philly, and tied for third is me and Quentin.
Luke is 6 points ahead of everyone else.
He might be pulling away from this, but there's so much more left in college football, so many more weeks, but we're moving quickly.
That Miami win really helped him out.
Oh yeah, that upset win.
All right, now on to the top 5 games of the week.
Let's do it.
Which there really wasn't very many good options this week.
Not at all. All right. Starting with
Washington, who's number 8. They will go on the road to play the Spartans of Michigan State. A little home and home series here, as they were in Washington last season. Now they're headed to East Lansing. That's a 5 o'clock game start time. Kind of weird. We'll start with Luke. What do you got on this one?
Now, obviously, being a big Michigan fan, I don't think that Michigan State is going to perform well, and I don't want Michigan State to perform well. Therefore, I think I'm going to go Washington with a great win that's going to push them up in the rankings. I'm going to go 56-3.
With who at quarterback?
Michael Penix Jr.
Hey! Good job, man. Good job.
He said 56-3.
Moving on. Let me go next.
Okay.
Going second is me. I'm going with Washington. I think Michael Penix plays a great game. Throws the ball around, chucks it around. Michigan State. Was it 2 years ago they had the worst secondary in college football?
I don't know.
Well, they were terrible.
Probably both years.
Probably. I just remember C.J. carving their cheeks.
Okay.
Okay, I got Washington with the win. I got them winning 38-21.
Really? You know, I'm going to lean more towards Luke's side here. I'm going to go with a blowout. I don't think Michigan State's very good to begin with, and then Washington's offense is really high firepower. But then again, it's on the road. I don't think that plays a big effect in this game. I'm taking Washington 44, Michigan State 13. Next up, we got Kansas State on the road against Missouri, 12 p.m. start time. Both teams undefeated. Luke, what do you got?
I haven't been very high on Kansas State this season. I've never been really high on Kansas State. If you've seen some of our rankings, you might have noticed that I haven't had Kansas State ranked very high, but I do think they are going to be able to get a win over Missouri here, but I don't think that they're going to win it by a lot. I think that Missouri is going to keep it close. I think that Missouri is going to play good this game, and they are going to try to get this upset, but they aren't able to get it. I'm going to go Kansas State, final score 28-20.
I'm going with one of my teams in my college football playoff. Surprising team, my TCU type team of the year was Kansas State. Actually, it wasn't, but now it is. Kansas State. I have them winning 35-24, a close game towards the fourth quarter, but then Kansas State pulls away. Turnovers the story of this one, and I got Kansas State winning. What about you, Philly?
What was the score?
35-24.
I just didn't hear you.
Okay, gang.
This is kind of going to ruin
Come on, Deshaun.
a little segment later that we have. Missouri at home. I don't think Kansas State. I think they're a solid team, but I don't think they're as good as advertised. We are going to take Missouri for the win here. We're going to go 34-27 win over the Wildcats. Kind of ruins a segment later, but not much I can do about it now. All right. On to game number 3. We have James Madison against Troy. This one's at 7 o'clock. Yep, at Troy. This one's at 7 o'clock on NFL Network.
Interesting.
Might have to watch this game. Probably won't be very many other games on at this time.
It's at what time?
7.
Hmm.
Luke, James Madison's 2-0, Troy's 1-1.
I think James Madison is going to be able to pull away with the win here over Troy. I don't really have much to say about this game. I think it's going to be a 17-7 victory for James Madison.
17-7. Low scoring.
Let him cook.
He cooked last week.
Yes, he did. I'm going
not
James
questioning him.
Madison. Let me just copy Luke. Go 17. I'm kidding. I'm going
Be a good idea, probably.
24-10. James Madison with the win.
All right. I'm also going to go James Madison. I'm going to take a 23-10 victory.
Game 4.
Next one, we got the Backyard Brawl. This one's also around the same time as James Madison, 7:30.
Pitt at West Virginia.
Yep, Pitt at West Virginia. They were in Pitt last year for this game.
Last year was the return of this game, wasn't it?
Yep. Both teams are 1-1. Luke, what you got?
I think. Now, I don't like to say this, being a Marshall fan, and I know I'm a Michigan fan too, but I'm both. I'm mixed.
What would you do if they
You're
played
not
each other?
mixed.
What
You're
would you
also
do?
not both.
Who would you pick if they played each other? Like, who would you want to win?
Michigan versus Marshall?
Yeah.
I'd probably say Michigan.
All right, continue.
I think, I don't like to say this as a Marshall fan, but I think West Virginia is going to be able to win at home against Pitt. You know, that atmosphere at West Virginia, kind of underrated. I think it is kind of hard to play there on the road and get a win. But I think that West Virginia is going to win over their rivals Pitt. And they're going to take the win, let's say. Don't think it'll be very high scoring. I'm going to go 24-21.
That'd be a good game. I'm going with Pitt here. Pitt wins this one. The battle of the 1-1s. I got Pitt advancing to 2-1 and winning this one 31-30.
Luke picked West Virginia. Maddyx picked Pitt. Kind of a strange game. Don't know very much about either of these two teams.
Same.
But I'm also going to take Pitt. I'm going to go Pitt 27, West Virginia 22.
Interesting. Game 5.
This is what I think will be the best game of the week, which is why we saved it for last. Most competitive game. We got both teams are 2-0. It's BYU at Arkansas. 7:30 kickoff time on ESPN2.
Luke, what you got?
Arkansas playing at home against BYU. I think that Arkansas is going to be able to get this win fairly easily here. I think that Arkansas is going to be able to win by a score of 38-21. I think that they're going to win this game fairly easily.
My turn here. I'm going Arkansas. I think being at home is going to be the difference here. I got Arkansas winning 26-23.
I don't want to be that guy, but I'm going to have to be that guy. I'm not trying to go straight across the board. Everyone picks the same thing. We're going to make it a little interesting. We're going to pick BYU. I'm picking Keaton Slovis to get this one done on the road. He's been on some tough atmospheres.
About that guy.
Yeah, he's been on like 7 teams. Been in some tough atmospheres. Played on some decent teams, some good teams. Played against some decent teams and good teams. And this is another one of those tests. We're going to take BYU 37, Arkansas 27. All right, that wraps up that segment.
Moving on here.
Are we going upset of the week?
Let's go upset of the week.
Upset of the week.
Philly,
New segment.
You start this one out. This is not, we're not saying 100% this is going to happen. We're saying
if we had to pick one,
a most likely upset of the week, this is going to be it. And Philly has pretty much already stated his.
I already said mine.
Yours is Missouri Kansas State at Missouri, right?
Exactly. Kansas State on the road, like I said. The team that they're playing They're a good program, good football team. Proved that last year. Have some of their returning talent. I think Missouri, their home atmosphere, whenever all their fans show up like they did last year against Georgia, they really slowed down the Bulldogs. And they really played them closer than any other team the whole season. They played them better than the team that they played in the national championship. The only team that played them better, of course, Ohio State, missing that field goal to send them to the national championship. But other than that, Missouri played them the second best. So I'm taking Missouri as my upset team of the week. Luke, who's your upset team of the week?
My upset team of the week. There's a few sleepers on here that could be potential upsets, but I am going to go for my upset. I'm going to go the Minnesota Golden Gophers and North Carolina. I think that after that performance in the Appalachian State game, there's a lot of questions for North Carolina right now. Drake May has been really underperforming recently. Like Dawson said earlier in the podcast, there's some times where Drake May is just incredible, and there's sometimes he's just off. Recently he hasn't been playing to his full potential. So, which is why I think Minnesota could be a sleeper pick here to beat North Carolina and potentially sneak inside the top 25. That's all I got on this. That's my upset of the week. Yeah.
All right. Matt Pat.
All right. I'm going to go here. A team that is ranked 14th right now. A team that just came off a loss in week 1 to the Florida State Seminoles.
Mm-hmm.
The LSU Tigers. On the road at Mississippi State. I have Will Rogers and the Mississippi State Bulldogs upsetting LSU. Rogers this year, 33 for 46 for 389 yards and 5 touchdowns. Rushing, you have Marks with 43 carries, 250 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And Griffin has 9 receptions, 116 yards, 2 tutties. Jalen Daniels and the Tigers have not been able to run the football this year. Their leading rusher with 115 yards. Through 3 weeks, that is not very good. He has 15 carries, 115 yards, and touchdown. That's Diggs. If they can stop the pass here, they're going to win. I have Daniels having a rough game, and I have Mississippi State with my upset of the week. All right, I'm going to write these down, fellers.
You know what I mean? If I had to pick another team that wasn't Missouri to upset, it was between those two. I was going back and forth, and I ultimately decided on Missouri. But if I had to pick another team, I would also have picked Mississippi State. I think they're a solid team, like Maddyx was talking about, with upset potential. And like I've said before, I really don't think LSU is that great of a team anyway, so perfect for them.
Now for another segment on this podcast, and our last segment on this podcast. We're going to review the Week 2 matchups of Ohio State and Michigan and look ahead to the Week 3 matchup. Let me start here. I'm going to take the mic, and I'm going to start this out here. Got a lot to say. Ohio State last week played Youngstown State Penguins at home. Home opener here. Buckeyes, people would say they were disappointing the week previous. We come out here, we start Kyle McCord again. Immediately, 71-yard touchdown pass to Marvin Harrison Jr. Getting Marv the ball. We get the ball back. 39-yard touchdown pass to Marvin Harrison Jr. We gave up a touchdown run to Youngstown State from 1 yard out. On their first drive, they drove it down the field. They milk the clock and they score. We'll get the ball back, like I said. Marv scores. Then, second quarter, Travion Henderson from 13 yards out. Egbuka from 28 yards out from McCord. And then Henderson for 30 yards in the third quarter. And that would give the Buckeyes a 35-7 win over the Penguins. McCord in this game played a whole lot better than he did a week previous.
Oh, yeah.
14 for 20, 258 yards and 3 touchdowns. A great game for him. Henderson, 5 carries, 56 yards, 2 touchdowns. Run block looked fairly better, and we got Henderson in space, and that's what you have to do with his type of speed. You get him in space, no one's catching him. Receiving, we got Marv the ball, and we got Egbuka the ball. For these two, they had Marv with 7 receptions, Egbuka with 5 receptions, so 12 total. Marv had 160 yards, Egbuka with 94, 2 touchdowns for Marv, 1 for Egbuka. They got them the ball, and you can see what happened. Then we bring in Devin Brown, and a lot of the second half was Devin Brown at quarterback. 7 for 13, 101 yards. And one thing I got to say about Brown, he's a little too antsy in the pocket. All he wants to do it seems like all he wants to do is run. I mean, he's rolling out a lot. Sometimes when the pressure breaks down, you got to, but he rolls out a little bit too much, and his eyes don't go downfield. They go forward, and he tries to run it. He's got to keep his eyes downfield. He's got to be able to throw the ball on the run. He showed it one time that he could with an absolute dime to G. Scott. But I think Kyle McCord just solidified himself as the starting quarterback for the Buckeyes. And I understand people saying, oh, they only won 35-7. Those new clock rules, the clock continues to run after first downs. And you have Youngstown State who didn't snap. They snapped the ball as much as they could inside 10 seconds on the play clock. They just milked the clock all the way down as much as possible. And all they were trying to do was keep the ball out of our offense's hands. They didn't want us to have the ball, which is smart when you're trying to get an upset. But when we got the ball, we had 9 total possessions in the game. We scored 5 times. Pretty good average there. And we limited big plays, which is something we did not do last year, even when we played lesser teams. Defense made me very happy in this game. That first drive was a little rocky, but after that, they didn't give up a single point. So, I maybe expected 49 to 56 points in this game. If we kept McCord in, I feel like we would have hit 49. But, I mean, with those clock rules, with them milking the clock, and with us rotating quarterbacks, you're not going to score that many points. It's just how the game worked. All right, Dawson, actually, I'm going to move on to next week. I ain't got much to say. I'm going to move on to the Western Kentucky game for next week for Ohio State. We play Western Kentucky. They love to throw the ball. The week before we head to play Notre Dame, we play Austin Reed and the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Reed has thrown it 83 times at this point. That's 30 more times than McCord. I mean, their leading rusher has 78 yards on the ground. All they want to do is chuck the ball deep and throw the ball. And our secondary is going to be tested, and they're going to have to step up. Burke has played the best he has since his freshman year. These past 2 games, had a pick last week. I obviously think we're going to beat Western Kentucky. I think if we limit their passing game, they're not going to be able to run it against our front 7. And I have us blowing them out and scoring the most points we have all season against Western Kentucky. All right, you guys. Michigan.
I'm going to go ahead and jump Dawson here, so I always get jumped. Michigan nearly had the shutout again, but obviously they gave up a late touchdown to UNLV. We could have ran down the clock. We could have just kept them from scoring, but Davis Warren just decides he's going to throw the first pick of the Michigan football season this year. So that sucks.
My boy Davis Warren.
But the defense was incredible the entire game. 5 sacks, a forced fumble, 10 tackles for loss. That defense has been great. Of course, highlight of this game, J.J. McCarthy. He's been the highlight of this Michigan season so far.
Completed 87% of his passes.
Yeah, he has been incredible.
Blake Corum has 4 rushing touchdowns on the season.
Yeah, Blake Corum.
I'll
get to that. I'll get to that.
Luke, we're talking about this together. It's not just you and then me.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying I'll get to that. J.J. McCarthy, 22 for 25, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns. Great game. Corum, 103 yards, 3 touchdowns on 15 carries. One thing in the run game that needs improvement, Donovan Edwards. He has not been great this season. Only 35 rushing yards in this game. Yeah, we need to improve Donovan Edwards. Overall,
okay, but
great game. That's all I got to say.
They stack. The reason our running backs aren't running for as much yards as they were last year, they're stacking the box every play, and that's why J.J. McCarthy's doing so good, because it opens up the field for him to throw more, which is what teams thought was a great idea to do. They wanted McCarthy to throw the ball, and he's really improved on that. He was solid last year, even better this year. Someone said that he reminded them of 2019 Joe Burrow. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I can see some of it. Bias, maybe, I don't know. But completion percentage, 87%. I don't care what teams you're playing. That's crazy. All right. Next week we got Bowling Green. Me and Luke might actually be at that game, so we might get to see what's happening live in action. We don't know if we're going yet, but we might. We might be there. Bowling Green, obviously not a very good team either. Should beat them by kind of the same amount that we've been winning by.
I'm just going to say this. Let me just say this. I don't have much to say, but I just think it should be a blowout. We should win by, or we should at least score 40 points, in my opinion. At least 40. I'm going to go with 42-6 win.
This team's better than UNLV, though.
Does this past 2 weeks of Michigan only scoring 31, 35, does that make you mad at all, or do you understand it because of the run stuff?
I understand it because usually what was the reason we've been scoring that we scored last year was our explosive run game, which got us downfield really quick because running up the middle, and then there's a big gap. They just run it into the end zone. They just would keep doing that because McCarthy wouldn't pass the ball a lot last year. But the run game was so explosive that they could just run a few rushing plays and it's a touchdown. So I'm not really mad about this low scoring. Well, some would say low scoring, but I don't think it's low scoring. I don't think it matters. Nothing really matters right now because the teams that we've been playing.
Right,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Close this episode out. We'll end on my final thoughts. The reason, like Luke was saying last year, J.J. McCarthy didn't throw the ball that much because we were a very run-heavy team. I'm not saying we aren't anymore. We still are, but with the way that the teams are trying to stack the box to stop the run, they're over-committing to the run, which obviously is going to open up the passing game for McCarthy and, like, the speedster, Roman Wilson, just burning all the defenders he's got on him, man zone, whatever. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we'll win pretty handedly against Bowling Green. Thanks for listening to this podcast. We appreciate it. If you're still here, thank you for all the support. Thanks for tuning in, listening to me and Luke's argument.
See you in the next one.
We'll see you in the next one.
Adios.